So first of all, for those who don't know Pidom, he is an anonymous whistleblower, primarily using Twitter, who gets information from up to and including the highest levels of government and puts them out to the public in the interest of the public. So the name Pidom is an acronym that actually stands for people in distress or missing. Right, so because that was how the handle got started. It started as a sort of counter effort to people who were getting kidnapped. So it was like a sort of one man's effort to try and sort out these problems. Now, sometime on Thursday morning, which is 3 days ago now, I checked my Twitter account, as I often do, and I saw a message from this handle. Bearing in mind that I hadn't spoken to this guy in a couple of weeks, we had a bit of a fallout, but that's a story for another day. So I saw a message from him, and I opened the message, and the message said, actually, this isn't Pidom. And it was someone claiming to be someone close to him. And supposedly, this person said that the instruction from Pidom was to hand over the Twitter account to me, that Pidom apparently had been arrested in Port Harcourt and had been transferred to the False Criminal Investigation Department in Abuja under the auspices of the National Cybercrime Center of the Nigerian Police Force. And supposedly, Pidom's instructions were that this account should be handed over to me, and that I should keep on I should use the account and basically impersonate him, pretend to be him, and that in doing so, that would somehow create an alibi for him, which would sort of get him off. And the evidence that was provided for this was an administrative bail sheet. And supposedly the instruction was log into his account, start tweeting in his voice, act as if everything is all right, and somehow that would be used as an alibi with the Nigerian Police Force. Now, obviously, being that I wasn't born yesterday, I immediately smelled a rat. Because first of all, I took a look at the administrative bail sheet. The surety that was demanded was either a federal civil servant, a level 16 civil servant, with a property worth 500 million naira, which is mathematically impossible for a level 16 civil servant to own legally, or a private business person with property worth 500 million naira in the FCT, who would then have to drop their tax clearance certificate, their CAC certificate, and it's basically an impossible set of bail conditions, right? They have no intention of letting this person go. Bearing in mind that 500 million naira is 200 million naira more than the bail amount that was set for Godwin Emefiele, the former CBN governor. So clearly there was no intention to let this person go. And I instantly suspected that I was speaking to an intelligence operative, or at the very least someone working for the government pretending to be close to Pidom. So the instruction from this person was, do not go public with this under any circumstances. Keep this hush hush. Pretend to be him. And then the person sent me login details, which kept failing, but eventually he or she sent me a login detail which actually worked, and I actually gained access to Pidom's account. So immediately I gained access to the account, I immediately changed the account password and two-factor authentication so that only I had access to it. So I basically locked everybody else out of the account who might have been logged into the account. And then as soon as that happened, all of my, not all, but most of my personal accounts and devices started having security problems. Someone started trying to hack into my WhatsApp. Someone started trying to hack into my Telegram. I don't know how many attempts were made to hack into my Twitter. A sort of very suspicious two-factor authentication code was sent to my WhatsApp, which I was later informed could potentially be something called a zero-click exploit. A zero-click exploit is a type of malware which is sent to your phone, which you don't actually have to click on or open, which is why it's called a zero-click exploit, which is a very expensive thing to do, by the way. And as far as I'm aware, only state-level actors have access to that sort of spyware, which is sold by Israeli groups like NSO Group. As a result of that, I've actually had to replace most of my devices between Thursday and today due to security concerns. So I decided that the only thing that makes sense to do in this situation is to go public with it, because based on the fact that whoever this person is that I was speaking to has given me access to Pidom's account, so I know for a fact that Pidom cannot be safe. Something has to be going on here. So I went public with it. I put all this information out on my Substack, which goes out to, I think, 50,000 subscribers or so. And yeah, the very next day, bear in mind that this is someone who was supposedly taken in on the 5th of August. So that's more than 2.5 weeks now. The very next day, when this story started going everywhere, it raised it became a national story. Then the police, for the first time, came out and acknowledged that they actually supposedly have this person in custody who they suspect of being Pidom after 2.5 weeks. Bear in mind that under Nigerian law, you're not supposed to be detained for more than 48 hours without charge. 2.5 weeks without sitting in front of a judge. Finally, they acknowledged it, and then they rushed out a statement saying that they're going to take him to court next week, which we don't
David, if you don't mind, David, you've said a couple of things I wanted to get confirmation on. First of all, you're telling that they also tried to hack into your account. Do you feel that you were being sucked into this whole mix as well, perhaps? Is that what you feel?
Yes, in multiple ways. First of all, if you are trying to log into a Twitter account or a Gmail account, whoever is currently logged into that account can see the location of any attempted logins. So it could be, first of all, that someone was trying to get hold of my location, first of all, and then secondly, the instruction to log into the account of a missing person and pretend to be them. If I had done that, if I'd been foolish enough to do that, that could well have been a successful attempt to rope me into some sort of criminal case, potentially with the international ramifications.
Another thing is, Pidom's, at this time, Pidom, well, you hadn't identified exactly where Pidom was, so he's still missing at this time. But now that the police has come out to tell exactly that they have arrested him, have they indicated exactly why he was arrested in the first place?
What crimes did he commit?
Or the crimes that he committed?
So, the force spokesperson, Muyiwa Adejobi, released a statement yesterday where he claimed, amongst other things, that this person was arrested for involvement in subversive activity, whatever that might mean. In fact, let me read out the statement. So it says, in a well-coordinated effort, officials from the Nigeria Police Force National Cybercrime Center apprehended Bristol Isaac Tamuno B. Efiri, also known as Pidom, on allegations of committing serious offenses that undermine the integrity of government operations. There are several allegations leveled against the suspect, including unlawful possession, leakage of classified documents, cyber-related offenses, and others. So essentially what he's being accused of is being a whistleblower, because that's what whistleblowers do. They get hold of classified information and release them to the public. It's impossible for me to say because the kind of relationship we had never involved him sharing such information with me. So he never shared his government name with me, never shared his photograph, never shared his address, his actual physical location, he never shared his family situation. So we were friends on the internet, and we were friends by virtue of the connectedness of the work that we do, and we collaborated a number of times. But so it will be impossible for me to say that this is or is not Pidom. So the first was to push back on the narrative being promoted by Muyiwa Adejobi that somehow this person has committed serious offenses. By first of all pointing out that the police, in fact, has committed a serious offense here by abducting an unarmed civilian, a Nigerian citizen, because that wasn't an arrest, that was an abduction. If it was an arrest, first of all, the manner of its execution would have been very different. Apparently, there were more than 15 fully armed men dressed in mufti, right? They weren't wearing uniform, who burst in like armed robbers, and first of all, thoroughly beat this person up, and then took him in. And then, before he was transferred to Abuja, first of all. Secondly, upon being transferred to FCID in Abuja, he was kept in solitary confinement for 6 days, handcuffed for 6 days, without food for 6 days. Bear in mind that under international law, using starvation as a punishment is actually classed as a war crime. It's classed as a crime against humanity. The Nigerian Police Force did that to someone whose current crime was being a whistleblower, which, by the way, is actually not a crime in Nigeria. Then we also pushed back on the narrative that somehow the activities that this person was apparently arrested for required this level of priority, because pointed out, for example, that the actions of the Nigerian police force, amongst other things, which led to the most recent round of protests in the country, the End Bad Governance protests, have not been addressed by the police. The lack of professionalism within the police has not been addressed. Those are far bigger priorities than going after some, anonymous whistleblower somewhere, allegedly. And then we also pointed out that technically or supposedly Nigeria is supposed to be a country under law. Nigeria purports to be a democracy. And in a democracy, in a country under law, there are certain processes for doing things. So if someone is being accused of these things, most of which, by the way, are civil offenses, right? Because if the statement from the police is saying that there are petitions that have been submitted by several people, these are civil matters, right? You are supposed to invite the person to come into to speak to the police. You don't carry out this sort of Gestapo operation, using all manner of secret technology and whatnot to locate and track someone who supposedly is this person, and then sort of do this sort of rendition across state lines from Port Harcourt to Abuja. As far as I'm aware, there is very little basis for that under Nigerian law, but apparently the Nigerian police is sort of a law unto itself. And then finally, we pointed out that we shouldn't even be talking about a trial or being arraigned in front of a judge or anything like that, because the manner of his arrest in the first place, or rather the manner of his abduction, negates any purported basis for there being some sort of recourse to the law, because the actions of the police were illegal to begin with. We cannot build legality on top of illegality if we claim to be a country under law. In other words, he must be released immediately, and we shouldn't even be talking about a court or a court date, because the very process through which this thing was initiated was illegal. So as a Friday afternoon, we had eyes on him. We had a team member who visually sighted him and confirmed that he was alive and well. Maybe well would be overstating it, but he was definitely alive. But in doing so, it also became very clear that this person has suffered torture over the past 1.5 weeks. There are marks all over his body. He looks physically emaciated because clearly he's not been eating well, if at all. Bear in mind that for the first 6 days he was starved, and since then the condition has not much improved. In fact, one of the major things that the intervention team on ground in Abuja has been doing is getting food across to him, because he's actually apparently not being fed in FCID custody. The set of clothes that he was arrested in, or that he was abducted in on August 5 in Port Harcourt, are the same set of clothes that he's still wearing up till now. So as you can imagine, there are significant hygiene concerns there. The FCID is not permitting him to do basic sanitary activities. You can imagine how unpleasant that might be. He also needs healthcare attention, because for the 1 week where he was handcuffed and circulation to his wrists were cut off, which by the way the marks are still very visible, there's a possibility that there's some sort of infection that might have taken hold there. It's impossible to say without him seeing a doctor first. Needless to say, he has not been given any access to any sort of healthcare professional. And over and above all this, it's difficult to say what his state of mind is, because if you are thrown into essentially a dungeon for 6 days without food, without seeing another human being, without knowing whether you're going to make it out, alive, and the only reason your story has even come to forefront of national consciousness is because your captors try to rope someone else in who happens to then go public with it. And it's impossible to say whether you were actually it's impossible to say whether they actually had any intention of letting you survive this before this became public. So it's difficult to say the impact that this has had on his mental state. And then as of yesterday, the latest update was, I'm trying to send a lawyer to speak to him. The police has apparently restricted all access to him. They're not allowing anyone to speak to him, because clearly they don't want him getting any more information that can get out to the public about his treatment.